So
Okay.
this is the 6th episode of Developing Talent. We are finally doing Spanish League. It was always quite weird to me that it didn't just automatically win the first vote. But that's because I remember back in the day when the only regional league anyone ever talked about was Spanish League, and the times have apparently changed. It's all about the French people. They didn't even have a league back when the Spaniards had a league. They just had a bunch of random tournaments, alright? Spain had a league, and the UK had like 70 viewers on their stream. Nothing much has changed there, but Spanish League is still very big. I now view it as a league where a lot of teams can argue that they have 6 solo laners, and then a bunch of other teams can argue that they have a sick bot lane, and then 2 teams can argue that they have 6 solo lanes and a sick bot lane, right? And another team can argue they have that when their support isn't in the hospital. But we'll see what happens with those guys. And every jungler is straight chilling. Speaking of 6 solo lanes, though, our guest is Knighterrr. So hello, Knighterrr. He is
Hello.
from Mad Lions, who you will have heard of for being one of those 6 solo laners. And you will also have heard of Flatty, who everybody is very much praising on bot lane as well. They're a very good team right now. What place are you? Are you top?
We are third, I believe. Yeah, we're third.
Yes, yeah, you're third. You're 1 behind Movistar and G2 Arctic. Joining me, as usual, on every show is Orcs. Say hi again, Orcs.
Hi.
He's still casting.
Can't get rid of me.
Yeah, can't get rid of you. Like, try shipping him off to China, and he just comes back every week to talk about some random European country. It's
Through a typhoon as well, so...
through a typhoon. Apparently there was a typhoon in China. So, you guys may recall Knighterrr's being talked about quite a bit on the Twitterverse and on my stream and on the stream of basically anyone who's been watching ERLs, because this guy's bringing out stuff like Galen, stuff like Tryndamere. That's always a good way to get some attention on you. And he's also just generally being really successful. I remember him being hyped a couple of years back in solo queue on the basis of his Yasuo, but he's expanded greatly since then. So my first question to you, Knighterrr, then would be, as a mid laner, who do you see as other names that potentially challenge you in the Superliga?
I think Random is really good, and he's played really well this split, despite of his team's success. And then I think other names would be... What did you say, sorry?
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, but yeah. I think other names would be Friscuri and Kensuke. It's like the ones that come to mind first.
Do they challenge you in lane, or is it like other things that you think are really good about them?
I think Kensuke is really good on the champs that he played. Like specifically, maybe his LeBlanc is really good. Probably the best in the league for sure. But on champs where he's comfortable and can play aggressive, he's really good. I feel like Random is just smart overall. So Bossman. And he is very versatile. He plays everything, and he plays really well, regardless of what he's put on. And G2 Arctics is interesting because they play like really heavily, like skirmishing, and they tend to play really aggro around mid as well. And Frisco is really good at pushing his leads there. So yeah,
okay, interesting. So, if they're a team that plays aggressively around mid, how do you view your team as playing?
I would say our biggest strengths right now is probably playing for neutrals and always having a plan around those and trying to make the correct decisions. And I would say we play a bit slower and more macro focused than just skirmishing, but some games we've been skirmishing as well. But I think we're a bit more well-rounded, I would say.
Sure. Orcs, what do you think about Mad Lions Madrid? Formerly Mad Lions Academy, formerly Mad Lions EC, formerly like 5 different names.
I think the team fighting's been really impressive for me. I think particularly when Flack can sort of find a way to position well, it's been good. Something I think you've done pretty well is a lot of times sort of being able to spread pressure outwards. I think there's some teams where even if they have like pressure mid, they don't really transfer that to other lanes. there was your game on Rise against S2V, where I felt like you were everywhere all the time. I thought that was really cool to see.
That game was a disaster. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, but you know, I don't think that was on you. I think you did a lot of work, sort of getting things done and spreading that pressure around. But then obviously things fell apart a bit later on. Yeah, I actually wanted to ask because I remember a while back when you were on Nordavind, you were super hyped coming into the NLC. Off the back of scrims, like everyone had seen you in scrims and you're sort of dominating. I kind of want to ask, like, what happened behind the scenes there, and kind of your transition into Italy and then into Spain, how things have felt for you from like performance side.
Well, Nordavind was like my first like real team, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
And I think at that point I thought, you know, life was a Disney movie, and I just expected to win. And I don't know, I wasn't very smart about the game back then. I just kind of played, and if I couldn't skill check enemy, then we couldn't win. So it was a bit what's it called? There was not a lot of thought going into it, and then obviously things fell apart and things just didn't click until towards the end when it was too late. So
So do you feel like you've sort of picked up more like knowledge as you've gone along through Italy? Is there any like
yeah,
particular people who've helped with that, or any particular thing that's helped out?
I think my coach on Morningstars, the Italian team, has been really, really smart and really helpful, and he's taught me a lot. And that's like most of my ground knowledge about the game is what I've been taught by this guy or playing on this team. And for me, I feel like I've improved the most like during off seasons when I just had time for myself, like to focus on improving, do whatever research I need to, get in touch with the people I want to, and I feel like I have more time on my hands there to like improve individually. And then in terms of team play, it's you always get like a new view when you get into a new team. So yeah, I learned a lot like basic stuff about the game in my time in Italy, and then way more about like macro stuff and playing together as a whole on this team.
Sometimes players will say that there's like a player on the team who's like really insightful or knows a lot or like is experienced, and so you don't always get to see that from this perspective. Is there anyone on Mad Lions who you feel is like that sort of role?
I mean, obviously we have Tora, who's a LEC veteran, and
Yeah.
he's, you know, obviously he knows a lot about the game and he contributes a lot in every review, helps make everyone understand. And to be honest, I feel like our like level of knowledge on every player is like really fine, but obviously he has more experience. So
Where did you said the macro aspect came in on Mad Lions? Where on Mad Lions did that come in, do you think? Or was it just all five of you kind of figured it out?
well, I think there was some very basic issues at the beginning. Obviously in this split it's been going a lot better. But for the previous split we tried to play macro, but we fucked up on basics before that, and it made games really difficult, and we just didn't try to make the games easy for ourselves, and then we had a lot of we had other internal issues I can't really speak about, but
Sure.
and we also had a roster swap in the middle of the season or the split, which forced us to like relearn playing together, but I think it went well towards the end.
Okay, that's interesting then. There's something that's made me quite curious about the way that your team sets up. Because obviously the way these discussions are going, you think you've got a system that like works out well for all of you. A lot of people wouldn't necessarily say that on any team that they've been on the ERLs that they really picked up macro in any sense. So for you to identify a Mad Lions is really interesting. My question is, do you guys just all hate your top laner? Or what's the deal here? Because this guy is like permanently on a priority champion top, right? And then I see him just like leashing red buff on red side and just being ignored the whole fucking game. And he's good, by the way. Like, I'm really surprised when I see this guy. He frequently finds really strong trade windows against the other top laners. Some really good top laners. I think Spanish League probably has the best top lane in general of all of the leagues. But he kind of accepts, even though he has a lane with a lot of priority that he could easily play around, he kind of accepts, like, a role where it's like, well, they're going to get Flackid fed, Knighter's going to do his job, you know, team fights will go really, really well with these two. Flackid's actually being a very, very good team fighter for you guys, so it's not necessarily a losing strategy. But what's the deal with this guy? Because we hear about you a lot, we hear about Flackid a lot, and we've heard about Torre for about 5 years now. We're probably sick of him at this point. We don't really hear about this Kakos guy, so tell me about him and how you guys kind of came to your playstyle that you've got.
Well, I think for sure he's the most sacrificial guy on the team, and he will always do whatever it takes to win. And we've been trying to, play more towards topside recently, but right now we're just doing what works for us. And if that's playing 10 Karma games in a row, then that's what it's gonna be, you know. But for sure he's the most sacrificial guy, and he will never, he will never complain if he's in a bad spot. He will never ask for resources if he doesn't if he feels like we can do something else on the map. So he's just, very sacrificial, and he's really good at letting other people do what they want to.
Does he let, or does he maybe even ask himself for this role? Is he that kind of a player?
Does he even ask?
Basically ask for you guys to play around the other side of the map. Like, does he want you guys to play more towards Flackid? Does he want skirmishes to happen more towards mid? Like, is he that kind of player?
I mean, most of the time, our game plans just don't involve him, to be fair to say. No, I don't think he's... I think we have, like, a lot of people contributing to make stuff happen, so he doesn't really need to speak if it's the other side of the map. But like, when he asks for stuff, he's good at leading the team as well. So
sure.
Was this like sort of play style? Because obviously at the start of the split, was it just naturally how things start to play out? Was it like you decided to play around this? Did you try playing a bit more towards top side and realize this was the best way? Like, was it more naturally occurring, or was it like a decision to try and play that way?
I think it was really natural. That's just how it worked out best for us, and we just keep trying to do what we're good at. So
this recent switch, right? Like, we've been seeing Renekton from him, for example, set these kinds of champs, and you do still kind of abandon them sometimes, and that's fine. Like, I remember the days when the sole job of, like, Tolkien on Mouse Sports was just pick Renekton, make sure you have priority and want to swap for Herald, and that's all you have to do. Okay, we'll remember you exist at some other point in the game.
Yeah.
Like, you have started to do more. There was a game where Flackid was on Ziggs, and, it looks like you guys recognize that there was a fifth person on your team for once. Is this you guys preparing to be, like, a more complete team in playoffs? Are you maybe more conscious that there's, like, a definite style people could figure out? Or was this your assessment of the current meta? Maybe you think top champs are just better now?
Well, I feel like we've been testing a lot of different stuff, and we've just been sticking to what works for us. It's not like, it's more the champs dictating us than like how we want to play necessarily. So if we feel like some top champ is strong and we're really good at it, then we're probably gonna play around top more. It kind of depends on the champions, I feel like.
Okay, fair enough. So let's look at your at the other teams that are looking to contest you guys. You already mentioned G2 Arctic. How you feel like they skirmish a lot around the mid. How do you view that team then? Do you view them also as, like, the big competitor? Obviously, they're joint first in the league right now with Movistar, but it doesn't necessarily mean you think that they're the de facto biggest playoffs rival.
I mean, they're definitely hard to play versus because they're very different from any other team, and they play what they do really well, but they're not really as versatile. I think if you find a way to, like, break their guard, then they don't really have much else left. So like I don't really see them as the most, like maybe the team that could surprise you the most, but not really as the strongest team, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's my thoughts.
Orcs, what do you think?
I think that, I agree with the assessment about them skirmishing a lot. It feels like even sometimes it's like they'll be really aggressive. It'll be like C champion, kill champion. And like it works well for them, and they've got a lot of talent on the roster, so they can execute. There's definitely some moments where it sometimes backfires. Like Oscar in, I swear, he's had some great performances, but there's also some times where it's kind of like the Shy's been in LPL, where it's like he's a really good player and he does some really good plays, but then sometimes you just like, what am I watching? But I feel like in terms of like as a top contender for playoffs and even like into EU Masters, I don't think that they're as much of a threat as Movistar Riders, just because I feel like they're going to be going up against a bigger range of rosters, some really talented players at and also like once you're more acclimated to the fact that they'll often skill check you on these things, and you're expecting the contest in situations you wouldn't typically with other teams in the league, like slower pace teams. I feel like you could then adapt to that and be ready for it. So
Sure.
that's my kind of view on it.
I view those two teams really differently, actually. So before I give my thoughts, I actually want to hear your thoughts on Movistar first, Niter. Because you've already mentioned Kenzuki, and you mentioned his LeBlanc, and he actually has one of the best LeBlancs I've seen in the ERLs, and one of the only guys that is pulling off that playstyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I think Movistar has max lore with 4 people on his back. Like he's completely 1v9 every game, and I don't know. It's really insane to watch him play. But obviously, like they play really aggressive as well. I haven't really watched all their games, but from what I can tell, they like to play aggressive, and then Maxwell will always find his windows to do whatever he can around his aggressive lanes. And from my own experience playing versus Kensuke LeBlanc, and if you're in a bad lane state, Maxwell will always be there, and he'll make you cry for 20 minutes. So it's definitely a hard team to play versus. I just feel like Max Lore is really good. Like he can play whatever style he wants and do well. So
Orcs, Movistar. Give me the down low. Then I'll ramble for ages.
I thought compared to G2 Arctic, it felt like they were a bit of a sort of more slower control team. I think they had oftentimes where you could clearly see they like set it for information, and it allowed Maxwell to play around that. You saw like Jewel and Maxwell using that and pairing up, contesting, whether it's like for mid priority and playing around mid other areas. I was actually, the big surprise to me was I was really impressed by the bot lane. I mean, I rate Venza, but Jewel I wasn't super convinced on, just because the last time I really like looked at him too much was when he was on XL, and I wasn't too sold. But I actually think they've been popping off a lot, and they've been really challenging in the bot lane 2v2. I swear, like they will consistently look for all-ins in bot lane, and are like quite often like killing enemy bot lanes like 2v2s, and getting double kills on the back of it and stuff like that. Like I didn't, when I was looking at this roster, I didn't expect that to be like a sort of like highlight point I'd see, but I actually think they've been really solid, and kind of taking names so far. And I kind of think for me the standouts are really like Venza, Jewel, and Max Law. I think Kensuke's definitely had some good moments, but I feel like those three have been the ones that have impressed me. And I feel like Marky does his job, but I don't really have too much to say on him.
So, when it comes to these two teams, I think the way that they would attack a team like Mad Lions would be literally as opposite as humanly possible. Like, the way that I view G2 Arctic is that they basically just try to play their 3 solo lanes out as fundamentally strong as possible, and they play absolutely to the limit of aggression in all of them. This will end up transitioning into skirmishes, but that's somewhat incidental. I think the thing that they all really understand how to do well is they really understand individual trading windows really well. I think the thing that a player like Oscar Inin doesn't necessarily understand is when the enemy has strong all-in scenarios on him. So there will be a lot of times where this guy will be like 20 CS up, and they'll just get like a one-shot by Gnar and Mega Gnar form or something, because he's just really trying to push every trade window possible. And that's when we get that whole, like, he kind of looks like the Shy thing. Puts up against a team like Mad Lions, Where a team like G2 would naturally start attacking would then be at that top side, where you guys generally play quite like away from that. And the way that Movistar would look to attack you would be they would just match you on the way that you play. Because I kind of see Movistar as like almost a final form of how you guys do things, and that's also why I think that LeBlanc's so successful on them. They play really well mid jungle into bot. Venzer's having an absolute whale of a time on that roster. I don't think he's ever had more attention in his whole life. Remember when this guy first played in Spanish League and he was on that Origin roster, and that Origin roster had a Zanzibar trying to do whatever like 5-minute first clear tank jungler he could force to work with Spellbook or some shit, you know? Like, he never really got any sort of aggression early, but now he does. And Maxlaw is a very active jungler in what, by and large, outside of like one other jungler I can really truly think of, is a very inactive jungler region early. Cold is potentially a jungler that doesn't do that. He knows he has full lane priorities and he tries to play aggressively in enemy jungle with it. Sometimes it can turn to flips. They actually dropped in EU Masters because those would turn into flips, so I'm not even sure if it's like a consistent pattern of play with him that they can bet on. But Maxwell gets so many advantages just trying to contest this push into bot over and over again that I view Mad versus Movistar as almost like a mirror matchup, right? Whereas Mad versus G2 Arctic will be like, well, you've tried some of these play around top things. If you don't succeed in thinking of like maybe including this guy in the conversations that are deciding before he comes into work on the day, maybe there's an area there where G2 Arctic could do something. But I view those matchups like really differently. I wanted to get both of your thoughts on that. Like Knighterrr's thoughts first would be good. Like, what do you think of that? Do you think that I have things right? Do you think I'm just chatting shit?
I completely agree with the laning part about G2 Arctics. Like, they always draft just to have winning matchups
Yeah.
if they possibly can and play really, really aggressive. And I mean, if you don't get caught off guard by that, they're not that strong, to be honest. But they're
I
really
agree.
good at pushing those leads. I think even some of their games, like, for sure they should have lost them when they came further into the game, but the enemy team they played versus just choked or whatever. But yeah, they're really good at playing that style and catching you off guard. And like, if they get a lead, they'll keep murdering you. So, as for Movistar, I can agree. Like, they're really good at playing the mid 2v2 and just moving their pressure towards bot side. And something we do a lot, like sometimes as well, but sometimes we also just play directly bot and yeah, I mean, you could say it's a mirror matchup in that regard, but yeah, they're probably better at playing the mid 2v2 usually because of their drafts as well, and I think we need other means to beat them.
He's not gonna reveal those. Like when he brings out the fucking brand mid or some shit, like it has to be a surprise, you know. Orcs.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Brand.
What do you think about these matchups? Mad Lions versus G2, maybe Mad versus Movistar. Because these are the big three right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with the sort of points you have, and I think Movistar will be the harder one. I know that obviously G2 Arctic can attack the top lane, but I also think like if you're working to give more attention to your top lane, then I think you can nullify that. And I also feel like it's easier. It'll be easier to deal with that because you've obviously. I think a big thing is like a lot of the teams get caught off guard. Like you said, there were games where they would win where they really shouldn't.
Yeah.
I think it's just like teams will get into that state where they're like, okay, we're ahead, we're comfortable, let's do this, let's do that. Okay, you push mid. Suddenly they're engaging on whoever's pushing mid, right? And then you're like, oh well, we're ahead, we can defend them. And then you get brought into this bad fight and you end up losing. And then they get Baron or something and they bring it back. And I feel like once you're prepared and you know that they will look for those, I think they become a lot less threatening. I actually think this team might end up falling off quite hard in playoffs, and if they don't, because they're still very talented, like individually, and they find good trading windows, I think they'll fall off in EU Masters. Is my interpretation of it. Whereas I think Movistar are a team who will do well at playoffs and EU Masters, and I think their strategy of transferring the pressure works really effectively. And I think Venz has shown he can sort of work with resources, because I think, you know, there's definitely some midi carriers who sort of I mean, it's kind of weird to say don't sort of benefit as much from getting all the resources, but they
Do
don't
like 2
make
autos
it.
per team fight and then fuck
Yeah,
off for the
and
day, you know?
I think Venza's really fit into this team well, and I don't think that was a given, right? Based on like how he's played in teams in the past, but he's really working well on it. And actually, speaking of Movistar Riders, I wanted to talk about Cremy Bettis. So I feel like you know how you were talking about the mid jungle transfer pressure bot.
Sure. We'll get
I feel,
onto them, yeah.
I feel like for Cremy, that's what they should be doing, but I feel like there's like this disconnect. Like I feel like Jack Spectra's just getting like I feel like the enemy team so often stacks up a wave and then just dives bot and they do nothing about it.
Oh,
And I think Jack
I have things to say about Cremy Bettis. I want to clarify a couple of things then. So, I actually really agree with what Niter said about how, like, if you just don't let the immense amount, not in a fucking mental sense, but if you just don't let the pressure of the compositions that G2R2 pick on you early get to you, you have a lot of windows on them. I think that there's a world where Mad Lions don't even really do anything about top, and they just beat G2 Arctic anyway, because Kakos is trading really fucking well. I think he's the only guy in the league outside of Oscar Rinin who really understands this aspect of top lane super fucking well. I think Dreedy understands the thing that neither of those two maybe know so hot. It's difficult to tell with Kakos because he doesn't really get good windows for it, but Dreedy understands all-in windows really fucking well. I used to say that like Oscar Rinin and Dreedy together would be like the perfect top laner. But Kakos definitely does look like a player to me that could just contest Oscar Rinin one-on-one straight up. And I think he'll end up being like a silent MVP in like a Mad Lions win versus G2. No offense, Niter. Your Nasus mid will obviously get all of the praise. It's all good. But when it comes to Venza and Movistar, I think you could have predicted it would be a good fit. I think Kenzuki is the more surprising aspect, how well he's working here. And maybe a lot of that is development brought on by Max Law being there. Max Law's... You remember Max Law's last NLC team, though, right? With Unforgiven on bot lane. It behaved very similarly to this. Very similarly to this, right? And slotting Venza in, who's a guy who's always been really strong in teamfight scenarios. Maybe never been the best laner, but has always been a really sick team fighter. Part of why he forced AP bots so much is that he kind of like foregoes the part of the game he's not really the best at and just all in on the team fighting part, you know? Fuck it, we'll just be Hyun and V2. I think this is one of the perfect teams for him. And how well it's gone so far, I think, is just testament to, honestly, this was just a really well-built roster. If you're thinking purely about just, let's just try to win Spanish League. Should we move on to Cremy Bettis from Orcs' thing, or do we want to talk about UCAM briefly? Because they're kind of Dark Knights in terms of they should be contesting first, but obviously they have a lot of issues in support right now that aren't the issue of any individual one of the supports. But like Knight has said, like mid-split changes, you basically have to learn how to play with like a new team, you know? Change one, you change the whole dynamic of the thing. I do want to get your opinion on Baka, Niter, because for me, I think he's fundamentally, like, from like a knowledge level, I think he's really, really strong. But on the other aspects, you didn't necessarily name him when I asked for like the other strong mids, right? So how does he rank up to you? What do you see as like his flaws, his positives? Like, what's it like playing against Baka?
He's probably like, you know, like their team when they had a lot of success was probably the most complete team, I would say.
Yeah.
They could do anything they want in terms of how they play the game, and I guess he's just really good at fitting into whatever slot they need. But yeah, I completely agree. Like on the fundamental part, he doesn't seem that strong compared to others. So. Like in laning specifically.
I think in laning, his knowledge of laning is really good, but when it comes to like maybe I wouldn't say situational awareness, but maybe when it comes to like mechanics, he's not like trying to be the next leader or something in mid lane, you know. And those would be the areas that would hold him back, if anything.
Yeah.
Orcs, what do you think about either Baka or UCAM in general?
My opinion of Baka was it seemed like he was quite proactive in leaning to side lanes the side lanes and trying to facilitate them. I feel like that's something that I felt he did quite proactively compared to potentially other mids. I did actually want to ask Niter, do you know much about sort of behind the scenes at UCAM? Like, was Plasma like a big voice in the team, and was he? Is that because obviously they're struggling since then? Was he like a big factor in their comms or systems?
I don't know their behind the scenes, but like from an outside perspective, he was really fucking good, and their team really great success with him. So obviously he must have contributed like on a really high level, but I don't know their. I don't know how it looks behind the scenes, but obviously they're struggling a bit right now compared to before.
That's fine, yeah. I mean, I figured that was the case. I was just wondering if you sort of knew specifically.
I mean,
I don't.
Plasma's a name people have talked about since he was on Kick, and I don't mean Polish Kick, I mean like Portuguese Kick, right? Like this guy, even when he was like a Zillion one-trick, people knew he was good. He was trying to do things around the map that a lot of other supports couldn't, and he was always really, really good in team fights. And he was a very big piece of that team. I think their solo laners were still really, really good for them, but I think when it came to being able to impact the map, having someone like that, especially in Spanish League, was always an insane advantage. So like, I hope he gets better soon. And this isn't to trash the other supports that are there. Like, you've been put in pretty bad situations that I don't think anyone would want to be put in. So yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about them, but obviously it's a bit difficult to judge how they're going to be when they get into playoffs for now. I still somewhat believe in them returning to form, and hopefully they'll at least give us good series. But now we can move on to Cremy Betis, which is, we've moved away from the teams where it's like, these guys have really good solo lanes, blah blah blah, or Movistar, I guess, was just the Maxwell Kenzuki show. We are moving on to a team where the first thing I see when I look at Cremy Betis is they have Jack, Spectre and White in, an almost perfect fusion of just alphaness in the bot lane. What do we think of this team? Do we have any thoughts on Flatty that I can actually broadcast here? What are the thoughts here? Niter, Orcs, whichever one of you two wants to go first.
You go. I kind of already
Okay.
said a bit of mine.
For Flatty first, I think he's kind of like Kensuke in a sense that he's really good on certain champs, but not as good on others. Like on his champs, he's like he plays them well, but still fundamentally maybe not the most impressive. But he for sure knows like how to play their certain champs and how to make them work in every scenario. But he's not really given as much attention as Kensuke is, for example. So he doesn't maybe get to transition his pressure. But yeah, I think Betis, like they just have two solid solo laners, and then they play hard around their bot lane, playing really aggro, and both their bot laner and LeBron are just performing really well every game, it seems like. So
I'm definitely going to disagree with some parts of that, but I want Orcs to go, because he had some thoughts on anything being played around at all on that team. So
yeah, I feel like with Flatty, it's like whenever I look in a lot of games, he's like, and I go through and he'll be like 20, 30 CS down just naturally, and I actually check and he's like the lowest CS per minute of any mid in the league. And like sometimes like that can be justified based on champion picks, but I don't really feel like that's the case. And also like I watched through and it wasn't the case, and I was like, well, okay, I'll look and see how much he's moving, and it still doesn't feel like that is. It feels like he's just kind of naturally struggling in lane quite a bit. I feel like Rubio was at times in a similar position. Like when he went up against Oscar and he just got absolutely bodied and was like 45 CS down at 10 minutes. I think LeBron's had some good moments, but he hasn't really lent into his lane so much. And the thing that really frustrates me is I felt like their bot lane was a positive, and they've definitely had moments where if their bot lane goes untouched, they can like lean on Jack Spectre in the later team fights. But especially when he's picking stuff like Draven, I feel like they should be playing towards him. And it'll just be like enemy team will build up this stacked wave, right? They'll have mid prio, they'll rotate mid jungle down, 4-man dive Jack Spectre bot, misses out on the entire wave, and it's just doomed. And like it just felt like I watched several games where this was a thing, and they just weren't doing anything to stop or prevent it. And especially when it was on picks like Draven as well, and stuff like that. It's just like it's so doomed. It puts him in such a hole. And there's been like multiple games where he's like left out of dry, and I can't remember one of them, but I remember he was like 4 and 7 at some point in the game or something like that. I can't remember the exact figure, but it was like he just was getting brutalized, and it felt like the team just wouldn't do anything. And I feel like that's where my comparison to Movistar Riders came in, where I'm like, if they were transferring that pressure from mid to bot, if they had pressure to transfer, then I feel like this team would work. But
I mean, he played a Irelia game really recently where he picked up 2 very early kills on bot lane, and sure he went like 10 CS down for it, but he's on 2 kills.
yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
I think that one was okay, and like that wasn't one that I was looking at, and I was factoring like I didn't
Oh,
look
I'm
at that
factoring
one.
this one in because he did nothing with it. His situational awareness just wasn't really there to do anything, and it was very easy for his opponents. I think it was actually G2 Arctic there, and they're not a team that you can really afford to lack situational awareness against. Like they just started setting him behind, and eventually there was nothing this guy could do. Like I don't know, like Flatty's being a bit disappointing for me, and I think when the comparison with Movistar Riders is really good because I think both mid jungle on this team kind of have pretty big issues. I've never been on board the LeBron hype train. I remember last split he was getting pretty hyped as well, but I feel like the rest of Spanish League has kind of like receded more in jungle to be more and more inactive, almost as a response to how inactive someone like LeBron was, but still able to be doing something in skirmishes. And I think the way that LeBron plays means that you end up ignoring a lot of potential windows early game that your team really should be taking advantage of. He's like the antithesis of someone like Maxor. You know, Maxor does nothing but see all the advantages you can get early, push every single one of them, and then you don't have a map anymore. You don't have a room with which to make plays. You've lost the mid-board in chess, you know? It's almost impossible to do anything. And someone like LeBron should be getting abused on this more often, but there are very few junglers that are actually doing that right now. But it's obvious on this team because you have a bot lane that does play stuff like Draven, does play stuff like Kalista, does play stuff where it's Windows o'clock on bot, and none of them are ever capitalized on. And that will always be a limiting factor on that team. He's too used to last split where he could just pick something like Evelyn, AFK farm for ages, win the first Drake fight, you know, the play around neutral sort of thing that Mad Lions like to do. But Mad don't waste these early opportunities on the way there, you know? So that's what I view as like their biggest issue, and I view it as a mid-jungle issue. And I don't really think they play around anywhere, which is where I would kind of disagree with what Niter was saying about them. At least that's how I view on it. Got any thoughts on that, Niter, then? Or
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I haven't watched all their games, but it's
no?
more like the take from my view. But I can certainly agree with like the LeBron part where he will not capitalize that much on like windows he has. But like he kind of puts the solo queue playstyle, like the solo queue carry jungler playstyle into his team and does well with it, you know. But like certainly he should be punished in like in some windows, and when they play versus better teams, I think they will. So.
Oh yeah, like I couldn't imagine a team like this playing against like a Kick in Poland who have like Stefan, right? Who's really active in jungle right now. Stefan and Max as a jungle support duo are pretty immense. Or K-Corp, who are almost defined by how much stuff Targamas and Jinkov tried to do in early game, you know? Like, I can't see them being able to play against any of those kinds of teams, you know?
Yeah.
Which is obviously a high bar, but these guys are, like, they're just a couple of wins away from contesting you guys, you know? So I feel like we can at least talk about that. Cool. Which team do you guys want to talk about next then? Because after Creme Royale and UCAM, there's actually a pretty big drop-off. Like, G2 Arctic and Creme Royale Betas are literally separated by 3 wins. It's that's literally the top 5 of LVP right there. So on the next one, S2V, Team Keso, Vodafone Giants, BCN, and E-Monkeys. Like, which team do you want to talk about, Niter? I'll let you pick.
Let's start with S2E, I guess.
S2V?
Okay. Yeah.
Talk to me
I
about
think
S2V.
I think like probably the best mid, like fundamentally and on like diversity in this league I've played versus Random, because he just does whatever he needs to every single game and he does it well. And he's like the only mid outside of me, I would say, that actually right click CS. I don't know what's going on with that, but
Oft.
but but some mids just don't like right clicking CS even if they're not pressured, and doesn't really make sense to me. But for sure, like he plays every time I played versus him, both in scrims and officials, he's been playing his matchups really well, and his team does really well with like giving him tools to do stuff, but their team just doesn't work out like as a unit, it feels like. But it's like Rufus, I think, will always open through mid no matter what bot lane state is, every time he resets or dies. And then Random will look to play aggro, and maybe they can get some lead through that. And I feel like that's the only way they can kind of win their games, is if Random is carrying them. But as a team, like macro-wise and decision-making-wise, they just seem to flop, to be honest.
Okay. Orcs. They seem to flop, but Random is basically Spanish Faker, or Spanish League's Faker, I should say. Thoughts on that?
I feel like when you get to team fights, I feel like there's other players who can do well. I think Nixarino's been pretty good. I actually think Behave's been pretty good. Like there was the Gwen game recently. There's even a Poppy game where he went like Divine Sunder and he was actually doing a lot of work in team fights. And I feel like if they get to that point, they actually do okay. But I feel like, you know, I don't see them doing too much proactively in the early game. I don't see them really establishing too much leads. And there's sometimes quite a few mistakes that I could see teams like G2 Arctic or even Movistar like punishing quite heavily. And it kind of feels like it's like a hope that they get to that point, and if they do, then they're fine, and I feel like confident they can kind of handle themselves. But it's
Darren, you said
kind of
that like
yeah.
3 different players on this team are pretty good. Then where's the lack of map control early coming from on this team?
I feel like they're pretty good at performing in team fights.
Okay.
Like when it gets to that point, I think in team fights they have multiple players, but if they have a fair amount of gold, I think they can perform well. I feel like the thing is I don't think they're very proactive at getting to that point.
Sure.
And so it's kind of like if the other team's inactive as well, and they kind of handshake just to kind of chill until there's a significant fight. I think that's why S2V get their wins.
Sure. I think that I am looking at a team that has multiple people from one team that I remember having pretty good map setups, and that team was Isuba. And the guy there, who was basically solo behind their really good map setups, is now actually playing in the NLC, finally in a major reason, Jakey. So when I look at this team, I think first Behave actually does, at least in my head, have really big shoes to fill. A lot of people don't necessarily rate Jakey. I think he's probably the most underrated jungler in all the leagues. But these guys were much more used to the map kind of sorting itself out for them. It was on the back of a different guy. I don't disagree on Random being really, really good, and he's a nugget of gold on what is otherwise like a mid-tier team. But I think that they've never been able to make up for losing that aspect of their old roster. I think adding Nixarino is kind of whatever, but Behave would really have to step up to provide for the team what a jungler like Jakey was providing before. Something Behave has over Jakey, though, is that Behave's hands are definitely better than Jakey's was. So if he just adds the knowledge aspect there, then this team would actually just suddenly shoot up. It would suddenly shoot up. But this is something Rufus will have to join in on as well, right? We're no longer back in the days where you just needed like one super sick. I mean, I guess unless your name is Movistar Riders, one super sick jungler and everything is just lit. Like now this has to be like not a competition, but a collaboration between jungle support. But they have the tools there. Like these guys know how to play when they get that kind of a setup. So this is a team that's like an inch away from being really good, in my opinion. Thoughts on that? Were we serious about praising Random, or did we just notice that he's in the chat and we don't want to get beaten up when we leave the house? Or
No, I genuinely believe he's been doing really well this split, at least. So it's my thoughts from playing versus him.
Sure.
And I think on the team fighting perspective, I remember we had one game versus them that was completely lost, and we were on soul point versus like a Seraphine comp where we're not supposed to win any fight, and we randomly win the team fight and win the game somehow. So I mean, not really sure. Like they know how to play their fights, but
Alright, can't play their fights, can't play early, can't control them out. It's over. It's over.
But that game they played well early game. That I'll give them that. And we also fucked up. I mean, I don't remember the game in detail, but I just remember we should have not won that fight and maybe another fight, and we somehow magically win the game. I don't know what was going on there, but it was early in this bit.
Okay, banger. Alright, well, there is a ray of hope. Just not quite sure where it is, but it is there. Alright, if the enemy team fucks up, they have a good early game. There you go. You just have to have the enemy team fuck up. There you go, S2V. That's your game plan from now on. What do we think about Team Keso then, who have the honor of being the only team where every single flag that I'm looking at is Spanish, actually? Do we have any thoughts on Silo mid? Or do we want to skip to a retrospective of Java's competitive history?
We played versus them twice already.
Barely even remembers playing against them. There you go.
I think I haven't played versus him other than those two comp games, to be completely fair, and I played really unskilled matchups in both of them, so not really a good take on like his fundamentals. And to be honest, I haven't really been watching their games. So
I was going to say,
I don't really have much to say about him.
I haven't met a single player who actually watches the fucking games of the league that they're in. Don't worry, you're not you're not randomly out there in this or anything.
Okay.
It became a big meme in the last episode where Ciaz was like, I don't think I've seen anyone play Seraphine bot, and it's like it's actually been played like 8 times your split, but okay, whatever.
We haven't seen it, so.
I mean, there's no time to watch all the games, you know, only the ones that matter.
Exactly. Mid's the only fucking thing that matters. Care about Random, that's it. You probably met him a couple of times in solo. You barely remember that he was in the league until I brought him up, you know? I think with actually, Orcs, what do you think of Keso first? What do you think of Keso?
I
like cheese.
Like on those of them. I remember Sylar having a pretty good Azir game, but I thought Davis was pretty good. I think there was some windows he found to punish, which are pretty solid, and it felt like he could be a carry through the jungle, but don't really have too much to say beyond that.
What kinds of windows from Davis did you think he was punishing?
I can't honestly remember. I just wrote it down, so
I view them as quite a reactive jungler. Like, I think he's found windows versus like lower teams where these guys are going for a dive that is just completely illegal, and he will punish that, right? But I don't see him as like I think I see like 2 junglers as potentially proactive in this whole league, by the way.
I think it might be more like he rather than him making the window, he just finds a window, right?
Yeah. I still view him as quite reactive. What do we think about Java, though? Because there was a time, Land Beyond, where Java was like one of the next up-and-coming ADCs, but now, in the age of Lucker and Xmati, and, you know, now Jack Spectra, when one day his team remembers he exists, like, amidst all these guys, we've kind of lost Java's name. Like, what do we think's going on there? Do we think he's still good, for one?
I wasn't particularly impressed by what I saw. I think was it them who got double killed? Like, I think it was against Movistar Riders, and they got like double killed at level 1 in a 2v2.
In fairness, against Movistar Riders, I don't think it ever feels like a 2v2, even when it actually is. But
I mean, it was at level 1, and I was just like, how does that even happen? That kind of stood out to me as a bit of an imp play. I can't remember if it was Movistar, but I just remember seeing that and thinking it was pretty questionable. And I feel like that's kind of my view. I don't really rate him, and I think there are better AD carries in the league.
Sure. I mean, I feel like this is a player that had a lot of room to grow, but had that room to grow at the same time as the recession of jungle. That's what I'm calling it from now on. Because I just want to say, Knighterrr, this is a purely Spanish League phenomenon. Like, jungle is not played like this everywhere else, okay? It's just purely in Spanish League. It seems that junglers feel like, fuck it, these laners, I've been their slave for so fucking long, fuck this shit, alright? Like, I'm doing things my own way from now on. I don't experience this in any other fucking league except for Spanish League. It's endemic. It's ingrained in their bones now, alright? These guys are rebelling. You have to quell them at some point, right? You need to turn to Alex and be, you know what? Fuck you, alright? I have to look up your name, alright, to remember it. It was 2 X's, alright? I have 3 R's, alright? That's way better.
Yeah.
Okay? Just get the fuck over here, you know? Just start it coming back. But I feel like Java's a guy who would have done really, really, really well if he had teams that were, like, making up for his earlier laning phase misjudgments, right? If he could expand on the things that he was really, really strong at, and if one day he ends up on the team with jungler like Maxwell, I think we would start talking about him as being good again, be a bit results-based analysis, but he'd have more room to grow. Because I miss the days when this guy was justifiably being brought up as, like, when all these boys move up, it was these were like the Neon Jeskler times. When all these guys move up, you know, maybe we'll start talking about Java. Like, I do miss it. I think it was deserved. I do not think it was deserved for Sendo. But Orcs remembers my Sendo rants very, very, very well. Now we're going to move on to the team that I'm going to love to rant about, okay? So let's move on to Vodafone Giants and their Jungler of the Week 113. What do we think about Mini Duke first and foremost? Alright, people still talk about Mini Duke. People still talk about him as being a good mid laner. And by people, I mean any time that Vodafone or Giants or anything blue is mentioned, I will get an at in my mentions about Mini Duke. What does Knighterrr, a guy who's presumably played against Mini Duke twice and not watched his games many more times, think about Mini Duke?
I watched some of the Giants games, actually.
Oft? That's
Yeah,
branding right there, Giants.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I think maybe he's not as bad as he shows, but this split he's definitely not been feeling comfortable. Like, I don't know what's going on internally in their team, if it's like if there's too much pressure on them or anything, but like I remember him as a better player than what I've played versus this split. So there's there's some like issues in the fundamentals that are like more prevalent than before, but like he used to be kind of good, and
Okay.
I don't know.
The
kind of
Java
what I
of mid lane. That's how we're gonna go here. What's it like playing against Giants though? For the last 2 splits, this team has gone from being a team that was basically synonymous with top tier Spanish League to this weird state that they are in now, with the permanently cycled mid jungle positions. Like, what's it like playing against this team? How do you view them?
I think they're not playing this split as they were previous splits, where they were like they would always give all the attention to their bot lane, and the Antonio would actually be a monster on like weak side, with Sion always getting the wave if he gets stove and whatever, and people were not able to make cross maps versus their team, and their bot lane would just get ahead, and doesn't feel like they're doing that anymore. And I definitely feel like their jungle mid position has been getting weaker, but you know, they used to do the thing where they just in mid and late game for objectives they just walk 5 mid every time, regardless of situation. And if they don't get punished, it's good, but if like there's certainly exploitable stuff about doing that.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But like I think people have not been able to capitalize that much on that, but this split they don't even do that anymore, so they don't really have anything going for them, it feels like.
I mean, this is something that I thought was figured out way back in, like, Season 7, right? Like, if you end up just rolling 5 mid for every fucking objective, you're gonna end up 2 levels behind obscenely hard. It's not the only access to any neutral, and you're not gonna be able to fix side waves. Side waves are gonna get away from you, they're gonna get caught after whatever fucking stalemate by the enemy team who's not playing like this, and it can go into a stalemate. that's what people don't seem to get about it. There are other angles of approach to any of the neutrals, and if you're fixing sides, you're gonna have to respond at some point. They don't. They can just chill for fucking ever. But yeah, apparently we haven't gotten around that. Giants especially. When you say that they play, so you said that they played through bot, but then you said that they're not getting as many advantages than bot. Do you view that as a playstyle change from them, or do you view that as a function of their mid jungle getting worse? Not necessarily as players, but maybe due to all the replacements. Do you view it as because their mid jungle's not getting like ahead anymore, they just can't play to bot as much as before? Or is it, or do you think they've actually changed playstyle? That maybe they're trying to play around the Antonio now or something?
I mean, I don't know, because like just as recently as last bit, it felt like they tried to do the same thing, but now they've kind of changed and tried to play for the Antonio in some games. And I also remember one game he played Jace.
Yeah.
He was left completely alone, like he was playing Cyan.
Yeah.
It was
Tip.
it was a bit cringe to watch, but I don't know, like I feel like they don't have their playstyle figured out, and I definitely think the mid jungle perspective like has a big impact on that.
Orcs. Vodafone Giants. And we have to say Vodafone. It's nothing to do with the fact that the internet went down 7 times in one weekend, okay? But we have to refer to them as Vodafone Giants to be nice to their sponsors that they are representing, alright? But it did go down 7 times on the weekend. So Vodafone Giants, what are our thoughts on that?
Like, it's such a backfire to be sponsoring like a gaming team as an service.
I know what you're talking about. I'm just talking about Vodafone Giants, alright? Go on.
I feel like the team seems kind of like even when they have a successful indie game, it feels like they seem really lost on what to do from there. Like I feel like sometimes the way they set up fights is incorrect and they get punished for it, and that they've been caught out like a lot before grouping. Like they'll have people, enemy team will just, I think this happened, I think G2 Arctic did quite a bit, but they'll just like someone will be standing, like Attila standing in the middle of mid lane with no tier 1, just like farming the wave, and it's like, so Kising's a little bit away from him and isn't playing Thresh, and the enemy team will just run on him and just take him out. It's almost like a disrespect thing, it feels like, or just complete like lack of coordination. But it feels like, especially a team like G2 Arctic will always challenge you in those situations. I feel like we'll just run them over like constantly.
G2 Arctic just see blood, so yeah.
They will. And also like, I was looking back and some of their drafts feel unplayable. Like there was one game where they had like Ornn, Morgana, Orianna, Kog'Maw, Rakan, and then Kog'Maw rushed to its end, so they were full AP, and then like everyone just built Merc Treads, and it was like, how are you ever gonna play this game? I feel like they've had, like, I wouldn't have brought it up if it was just one game because like teams have a bad draft, but there's been like multiple times where I feel like I'm just looking at it, I'm like, even if you are playing well, which they're not, I feel like this is really hard to play. So I just feel like, I don't know, it feels like the heart isn't really in it. In all honesty, it feels like this team like accepted their fate.
Like the losses have kind of done their toll on them.
Yeah.
At this point. I think it's kind of interesting. I don't know. I like, obviously everyone's heard a bunch of random rumors on Twitter and stuff about like Attila's behavior behind the scenes or something. But Attila's a player who I didn't think should have been dropped from Vitality when he was. I thought this was a player who was definitely LEC ready, was not the problem with that bot lane. I think everybody has now figured out who was the problem with that Vitality bot lane. So I'm full team Attila on that. But when it comes to the way that this particular Giants team is being managed, I'm not saying Attila should have been benched, but I'm saying if what they really wanted to do was just do like an all-in on this bot-focused playstyle, and they keep cycling mid-jungles to do it, first off, teams like G2 Arctic show you don't have to do that. Right? They show you just don't have to do that. Not every team has to be trying to make Movistar Riders roster, right? And next off, I think you gave up some really, really, really good talent along the way. Like, I've been a big proponent of Ekkas, for example. Even when these guys were, like, losing every game, I thought Ekkas was quite clearly one of the smartest junglers in the ERLs in general. And they gave him up. Every single time that you lose one of these talents, you're signaling to all of the other top prospects in a role like jungle or in a role like mid, this is not really the team where you're going to find the stability you need to develop, you know? Like, Niterrr's gone through 3 different teams, right? And in each team he got something. Lord of Garen, he got the experience and Disney fantasy blown out of his head, right? So fantastic, whatever. He actually learned how to come into his own as an individual player on his Italian team. Was that which team was that, Niterrrr?
Was Samsung Morningstars.
Fuck. Okay, so the guess I had in my head was correct, but I didn't want to get a team wrong again. So, and then on Mad Lions, he started to learn macro. But imagine if he got ripped halfway through Samsung Morningstars. Imagine if he got ripped halfway through Mad Lions. He would lose out on all of those lessons, and he wouldn't be the player today. It's not like day one he got into Nordavind and he was shown like a 1-hour film reel of why the Disney fantasy in the head doesn't exist. It's not like he went into Samsung Morningstars and in one 20-minute conversation with his coach, the information had just been implanted in his brain of how to play mid-lane League of Legends, you know? And it's certainly not like in one split, Mad Lions, the roster that he was on, actually looked like a team that was contesting for a top 3 spot in Spanish League. You can't keep cycling players like this. You stunt their developments and you stunt your own. As Knight has already said, when they did a mid-split change, they basically had to learn how to play with a new 5, even though you've only changed one person. So you're going to stunt your team's growth, you're going to stunt the growth of your individual players, and every time you do this cycle, even if you're doing it for a lane, that is good, right? And I think for as many hard resets as Attila will do on mid lane, that plenty of people do those kinds of errors. I think this guy is still very talented. You're making it harder on both the team and on all of the players, right? And you're robbing them of so much development. There's only so much that you can just play wave clear Psy on top, right? And rely on it. You do need everyone else eventually to do something, right? That's why the Antonio works on this team, but it can't work if you don't have all the other stuff, and you're never going to have all the other stuff if you keep taking this approach. So I have to have that run. Justice for Ekkas. That guy, I can't believe this guy is a free agent. I just cannot believe it.
Yeah.
This guy was so good. Like, this guy was actually so good.
You know, he was on the Samsung Morningstars team as well, right?
Was he? Fuck!
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't make
played
that
with him.
connection. Shit, I genuinely didn't make that
I played with
connection.
him.
Fuck.
Yeah, and I
subconsciously, maybe that's why I fucking brought you on the show as first choice. Like, fuck it. Yeah, go on.
Well, I also think he's a really great player, and like we kind of learned together, if that makes sense. And I definitely feel like he has the level, like, to play on Giants for sure. And I'm not sure like how or why he got swapped out, but I don't know. I think what you said about Giants' approach to like try to find success, I completely agree. I think their approach is really wrong, and Ekkas is for sure a great player with great potential, and I'm also really sad to not play versus him right now.
Hey, now you can turn to that Alex guy and be like, you know what? All right. There are supports in LEC doing your fucking job, alright? And one of my fucking former teammates is free right now, alright? I better see you mid this game, okay?
Yeah.
You got the fucking threat now, you've got the fucking trap card. Alright, brilliant.
Legit, I'll show him this clip.
Exactly, perfect. There you go. Okay, so, last 2 teams are BCN Squad and E-Monkeys. I actually do have things to say about E-Monkeys. Do either of you two have things to say about BCN Squad? Orcs, do you have anything to say?
Not particularly, no.
Niter. Will the world end if we skip BCN Squad? Do you want to say anything about Silk? It's a nice name.
Nothing stand out, I think.
Nothing stand out? Okay, alright, so E-Monkeys, alright? Oddly enough, one of the only truly active junglers in this league is actually Nyx. Nyx actually does try to do stuff early. Now, that doesn't mean that it's good stuff, but he actually is trying to make stuff happen around the map early. And that does de facto give E-Monkeys advantages that they sometimes really shouldn't have. Everything else ends up becoming a problem later on. But the other player that I actually think is kind of a golden nugget on this team is Natter. I think Natter has had some really, really, really strong performances. In the initial weeks when he joined the league last split was slightly worrying because I really like this guy in solo queue. Like I think he's one of the smartest solo queue players that I've seen. But the first weeks that he joined Spanish League were not the best. It seemed like he was just choking on almost every window that I know he would take if it was just a solo queue game. But once he started hitting his stride, he really hit his stride. And even in those initial weeks, he was really, really good on team fights. So, do either of you two have any thoughts on E-Monkeys? Do either of you two have thoughts on Natter? Because I think if we're looking for someone who, like, maybe not now, but like in the future, right, when all the ADCs kind of like cycle up, I think Natter might be the big prospect if he doesn't get Jarved, which is what I'll call it from now on.
Good way to put it. I think. Oh, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I feel like a lot of the time Nyx was kind of leaning towards the top, towards Nile. But I feel like they weren't always getting payoff on the.
But that is revolutionary in this league, Orcs. You have to understand how insane that is to see. Right.
I didn't really have too much to say about Natter, but I think, you know, I'll trust your judgment, veteran. You know, I feel like maybe if Nyx directed the attention towards bot lane, then perhaps could have a bit more success.
If Ekos wants to get into panel shows, Niter, just let me know, by the way. Okay.
Sure.
Didn't have anything to say about Natter. Jesus Christ. Okay. All right, Niter. What do you think about E-Monkeys?
Well, I was gonna say, even before you said your opinion, that only time I've been afraid of losing to E-Monkeys is when they get a random lead and it's on Natter. You know, like it's like he's the best individual player on that team for sure, and he really does like. He plays his role well, but the team just doesn't work, you know. But like he's for sure like the only player I would say that like has a chance of like carrying that team. So if he's not ahead, then I would never be worried. But if he's ahead, there's a slight chance, you know. But yeah, like playing versus this team in like mid to late game is just they don't know what to do. So you just win by that.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a lot of the fights just. Did you watch SK versus Fnatic on the weekend actually? Niter, perchance.
I might have, but I forgot about the game.
Okay, well, you definitely didn't, because no one can forget about the SK Fnatic game. Right, but like,
okay, then I didn't.
Anyway.
Oh yeah, SK won, right? Oh yeah,
yes.
I didn't watch.
I mean, that. So basically, there were so many times in that game where it was like Whippo on Rengar versus like triple disengage. Decides to just engage, and they get counter engaged on, and Upset is about 50 billion miles away, and there's no way Fnatic could possibly win this fight. Watching E-Monkeys screw up leads is kind of like watching that, because there's almost no way Natter could even be in a lot of the fights that they end up starting. They seem so out of sync. They don't ever seem to start fights on their own terms. Someone just kind of gets caught and fights just kind of happen around that, and then the people who are trying their best not to die get the most punished there and have almost zero impact. Like, I feel like if this team just decided to... Very basically, E-Monkeys, if you literally just started learning stuff like a winter recall, you know, you would actually be a really good team. Because there are some pretty strong carries here, like Natter, right? They could actually do something if they were able to be on the map at the same time and not just keep conveyor belting into these guys.
I feel like E-Monkeys is a good name for that playstyle.
Oh, for sure. But they don't wanna give that name so much merit. Not gonna lie.
Sad reality.
It is indeed. Alright, so that's all the teams in Spanish League. Do you think you're making EU Masters? Or...
I believe so.
Believe so?
I think if we play our best, we're... Like... If we get to control the games, we're better than all the other teams, I would say.
So which... Go on. Keep going.
Yeah, but some games we definitely have those game states where we don't really know what to do, and then stuff just kind of happens around us, and maybe we pull out ahead, maybe we don't. But if we're in control and we know what we want to do, and we play our best, then I feel like we're the best team for sure.
Okay. So, looking ahead, looking at EU Masters, right? Who is the mid that Niter wants to prove that he's better than?
Well, I think LFL has a lot of really good mids.
Okay.
But what I'm really sad actually that Game Ward is not doing better, because I wanted to play versus Tukui. I think he's really good. Obviously would like to play versus Sakin as well, because their team is doing really well, and I haven't really played versus him. But yeah, generally excited for LFL mids, I would say.
Okay. One name outside of the LFL.
Are you asking me, or you wanna?
Asking you, one name outside of the LFL that you'd be excited to play against. Could be someone you've scrimmed. Could be someone you've watched.
I would
in
also
regular.
love to play versus Kreis actually, or Kress, or however you want to say it.
Yeah,
Sencooks.
Sencooks, but yeah,
Yeah.
on Rogue.
Uh, Well, he's already a friend of mine, and we've scrimmed him a couple of times. It's always fun playing versus him. So.
Okay, fair enough. Danish solidarity going on there. Yeah. Okay, so how we normally end these shows is we do a like best in role list, but you can we try to form super teams, but you can only take 2 players from one team, so you can't just name 5 Mad Lions players, right? And
That's an
also
issue.
you have an excuse for not naming 5 Mad Lions players. See, I've given you plausible deniability here. All right. So we'll let you go first, then Orcs, then me. I like to give myself hard mode. But yeah.
Okay. Wait. Let me do some research. 1 second.
Okay.
Gonna watch the games though.
Yeah.
How-
Almost as if I should.
Do you scrim Spanish teams primarily, or do you scrim teams outside of Spanish League primarily?
We only scrimmed Spanish teams after we're done with second round robin versus them.
Interesting. Okay, that seems like something that most ERL players do now. So,
Yeah.
so I think is
And
actually
it's
quite
only
smart.
it's only a few other teams, anyways.
Paradoxically, it means you're all very bad at talking about your own region, but I bring in
True.
Spanish guy for LFL, Polish guy for German League. You know, I should do all this.
True. Well, this is hard actually. I think I would have to pick my full bot lane.
Okay.
Is Plasma pickable?
I'm gonna say yes, but I'm deciding if he's pickable with his cask or not.
Well,
I'll give you Plasma, because then you don't take your full bot lane, I guess, and you grab someone else.
yes. I would definitely go with Flacket.
Yeah.
I think there's no discussion about that.
Okay.
And I would like. The thing is, I'm debating whether or not I need Kakos or if anyone else can do the same. Because otherwise, I would pick Torre over Plasma, for sure.
What's really interesting is you haven't picked yourself.
Yeah, I think I need to pick my bot lane. I just need to.
Okay.
I'm gonna stay humble. So I need to pick my bot lane. And then Maxlaw for sure. I think he's by far the best performing jungler.
Okay. Alex
and-
just checking when his contract expires.
No, but like seriously, he's been playing like a monster this split.
Sure.
I guess like you can argue that if you pick Maxlaw, you can pick Kensuke as well. Otherwise, I would probably pick Random.
Which one? You have to pick one.
Okay, I'm gonna go for a Random. then.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think he has a lot of potential. And for top lane, I cannot pick Kakos because I picked my bot lane. So
we don't have Plasma anymore. We've removed
yeah,
him. Okay.
I'd rather have Torah, I think.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to pick. I think, like Oscarinian is obviously good, but he would not really work with the playstyle. So maybe I would just go for Dreedy, I think. Dreedy or Marky? I think Dreedy. I'm gonna go with Dreedy.
He hasn't watched your Irelia game either, Dreely. There you go.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Okay, Orcs, your turn.
Top lane, I'd go Kakos. Jungle, Maxlaw. Mid lane, Tuskave. AD carry, Flackid, and support. Jewel, I'd actually go for.
Really? Okay. So you've got Jewel and Maxlaw.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
I think Jewel's actually kind of surprised me how well he's been doing, like individually, like finding the 2v2 spot lane, and his role in fights. And I think Maxwell's very clearly someone who can direct him around the map.
Mm.
So they've already worked together. So I'm quite confident that duo.
Okay, I'm gonna pick Maxwell and Jewel as well. I think as a jungle support, I think they just work so well. If I'm doing that, then the tried and tested method is definitely a play to bot. I'm not gonna pick Flackid. I'm gonna pick Jack Spectra for that.
Respect that.
I'm not gonna pick anyone else on his team, which means that I can pick 2 solo lanes. And because I didn't pick Flackid, and because I have Jack Spectra, I can go for Kakos and Niter. So there you go.
I'd know that Nightingale's a bit shit. Not sure I'd want to take him.
Well,
Yeah.
well, Niter has a fucking random in his mid, so we're all good. I think obviously that my team smurfs
2
on all of
randoms.
yours, so. True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the thing that we all agree on there is that the way Movistar Riders are using jungle is just the best of all of the teams, and it's just outstanding compared to everyone else. So
For sure.
yeah, and honestly, looking at this, I normally try to find a way to like get around whatever you guys said, but on that particular point, I really couldn't do it. I couldn't really rationalize someone else who brings more to the team than Maxwell's bringing to Movistar from that role. So yeah. Okay, cool. Anyway, any shout outs to sponsors, Niter?
Well, take a look.
There you go.
And there you go, yeah.